welcome to We the People. Professor Tahir Mahmood, an academic but also somebody who's been the chairman of the National Commission for Minorities, made a compelling argument. He said it was high time that the custom of Triple Talaq should be done away with. And he argued that the Muslim Personal Law Board had lost its legitimacy and had no place in a modern society. His comments reopened the debate on personal laws, not just of Islam, but of all faiths, and whether they remain antithetical to the rights of women and the principles of a modern, equal society. It's also brought back the focus to one of the directive principles of the Constitution, a uniform civil code. It's the slogan of many a political party, but is any political party serious about it? And in the political environment that has come to define India, is it a desirable model to address gender inequality? I want to start with Sona Khan. You have been a lawyer in the famous, or I could say infamous, Shah Bano case. Ma'am, this case in a sense came to define the debate on both sides around how far you can go in deciding on personal law. For some of our viewers who were not even born then, this was of course about a 60-year-old Muslim woman, Shah Bano, who went to seek alimony. The courts granted it to her, but with some disparaging remarks about religion and the Muslim Personal Law Board. Protests on the street, and the Rajiv Gandhi government passes a legislation overturning it. This is a matter of record. How does the shadow of the Shah Bano case continue to impact our debate around the Uniform Civil Code today?
First of all, it clarifies there is no conflict between the Constitution of India and the Quran, because the judgment cites Surah Bakr, verse 241, Mataun bil Maruf. That means a provision has to be made for the divorced woman. That's a Quranic law. But the customary law is after iddat, which has been followed, that woman was not entitled to maintenance. That's what the Shah Bano's husband was pleading before the Supreme Court, that my Sharia law does not permit me to maintain her after marriage. But the court said no, the Quran says so.
So when the parliament under the Congress government actually overturned this verdict with the new legislation, how seriously did it set back the rights of Muslim women?
Unfortunately, it's irony. What they wanted to undo, they could not do. Today, that same act is really very powerful, and the courts all over India are giving judgments. It's a question of interpretation.
Kamal Farooqi, I'm going to get the Congress and the BJP in just a moment, but from the perspective of the Muslim Personal Law Board, this debate that's asking what is the sanctity of the Personal Law Board? Who is the board? And I'm saying this is not an Islam-specific debate, but the Muslim personal law, as far as I understand, has not been reformed since the 1930s, I think since 1937 or 38. Whereas Christian personal law, we have seen, for example, many changes in 2001. Just to give you an example, Hindu laws codified in 1956 and then also reformed further in 2005. So I think the question is, can the Muslim Personal Law Board be stuck in time, and can you keep the Muslim community stuck in that same time era?
You don't need any reform, because as far as the law is concerned, basically interpretation can be done in a different manner. As far as the Muslim law is concerned, Muslim law is nothing but a Quranic law, and Quranic law cannot be changed.
So you're saying that its interpretation may change, but the law itself cannot be changed. And so Triple Talaq must stay forever, even though, as far as I know, most of the Muslim world has outlawed it.
I tell you, as far as the Triple Talaq is concerned, that is prevalent everywhere, and nowhere it is being
That's
abolished.
Not true,
Let me tell you. In fact, that is the perception. In fact, there are three, four school of thoughts. One, Hanafi is a different one, but as Shafi'i very clearly says, and this is what actually has been defined in Quran also, that as far as the talaq is concerned, it's an honorable exit route if the men and women are not in a position to keep together. And there are three different periods in which the talaq has to be it has to be said. In fact, the general perception is that if it is said in one go, it is a triple talaq. Otherwise, it's not a triple talaq. Triple talaq is always triple talaq. If a man wants to divorce, he has to say talaq, and then it has to be waited for a month. After that, if he come back and reduce, the talaq is gone. But if after after another time, if he says talaq, then it will be second talaq again.
But sir, my argument is that Tahir Mahmood argued that this is 7th
Tahir
century law
Mahmood,
that has no place in 21st century India.
Please, as far as Tahir Mahmood is concerned, I don't want, because he is not here. Tahir Mahmood is one
okay,
of
I'm saying it. Is it a law that has any place in
actually, I don't.
Is it a law that has any place in modern India?
Yes, it is. Islam has always been modern right from the beginning itself.
Okay, now we've heard two very differing perspectives on this, and I want to just come to the politicians. Manish, the shadow of Shah Bano will forever hang over the Congress's claim to secularism.
Well, Barkha, if you've decided to go back into history and go back into time, then I think there's a need to put this debate in a proper perspective, that whether you like it or not, religion and custom outdate by more than a millennia. That does not mean that if religion and customary usage is completely and absolutely conservative or not keeping in with the times, it should not be reformed. But the reform impulse has to come from within the community. And as Mrs. Khan was rightly pointing out, if I get the nomenclature right, Section 125 of the Criminal Procedure Code still stands on the statute books. There is nothing which stops a court even today to grant maintenance to any citizen of India under Section 125 of the CRPC. So therefore, there may have been an impulse at that particular point in time to try and bring a codified structure insofar as Muslim personal law is concerned, but that in no way either ousted the Supreme Court judgment or oust the remit of 125 CRPC. They are coexistent.
Do you accept that personal laws are antithetical to the rights of women?
According
laws.
To me, the Constitution should be amended and Article 44 should be deleted. Wow. Because Article 25 of the Constitution, which allows the freedom of religion, the freedom of propagation, the preamble of the Constitution, which talks about secularism, is a complete antithesis to Article 44.
You're saying Uniform Civil Code should no longer be an ambition of the Indian state?
Absolutely. In fact, the eminent jurist, Sirvai, he says, what would happen if the fundamental rights were deleted from the Constitution? And he said that there would be catastrophe. But he says that if the directive principles of state policy were legislated out of the Constitution, nothing would happen. So therefore, the Uniform Civil Code is a complete antithesis to the idea of India as it stands constituted today.
Okay, that's quite something. That's quite something.
Let me add one thing. Let me add one thing.
Okay.
As far as the Uniform Civil Code is concerned, it is already there. It is
already the Indian Succession Act, the Special Marriage Act, read together actually constitute the Uniform Civil Code.
If any Muslim or Hindu, they want to get together, even a Muslim,
I got married under the Special Marriage Act because we came from different faiths. And if at all there is any act which is going to apply to inheritance, in my case, it is going to be the Indian Succession Act. So that read together constitutes a secular code.
Okay. Now, Sambit, the argument being made by both Kamal Farooqi and Manish Tiwari is that you can actually circumvent personal law if you simply get married under the Special Marriage Act. However, Kamal Farooqi Saab, that does not apply to the rights to adopt. We had Shabnam Hashmi and Gohar Raza who had to go to the courts to actually get the permission to adopt. And that does not apply, for example, Manish, to the notion of child marriages. We have 23 million child brides in India.
I'm sorry.
You have not understood the law properly.
No, it's not a different
You have not
argument.
understood the law
argument.
You have not understood the law properly.
Insofar as child brides are concerned, nobody in his right mind can ever support that anybody who is not of a majority age as defined by the law or who's willing should enter into a contract of marriage.
Let me read out something to you.
And let me tell you, child marriage is not something which is confined to Islam alone.
Yes, of course.
It goes across
Yes,
Indian
of course
society.
it does. And therefore,
I'm sorry.
Okay, hear me out for a moment. You're the lawyer, but I think I've done my research well here.
You always do your
Under
research
the
well.
Christian Marriage Act, minors can be married with parents' consent. Under the Muslim personal law, a girl can marry after attaining the age of puberty. And the Delhi High Court actually ruled in June 2012 refusing to interfere with a girl who had got married at the age of 15, a Muslim girl, saying it was under their personal law. And in the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955, there is a contradiction. Section 5 lists the age of marriage as 18 for girls, 21 for boys. But Section 11 has a list of reasons to annul a marriage, and being underage is not one of them.
Yeah, but
so this is complicated. This is complicated.
Of course, it is complicated. But tomorrow, let's suppose if the Indian state were to decide that we are going to mandate a marriage age, there is nothing which prevents the Indian state from doing it, and it will cut across all customary law. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Now, Sambit Patra, you've just heard Manish Tiwari say, just forget that the Uniform Civil Code is some real aspiration. It's part of your manifesto of 2014.
Verdicts after verdicts from the Supreme Court has been speaking of a common word that Article 44 is a dead letter today. But I believe what Manish Tiwari is doing is murdering Article 44 right now over here. We have to see to it that Article 44 in fact is brought back to life. For God's sake, I respect every religion present in this room. But why don't we respect the womanhood of this country? Why don't we respect the womenfolk of this country? Who are the sufferers?
Very political statement. Very good political statement you are making.
We are politicians. We are supposed to change the polity of this country. Let me complete. I just want to quote what Mr. Ambedkar had to say. I hold him with great dignity, so I read out from him. I personally do not understand why religion should be given this vast, expansive jurisdiction so as to cover the whole of life and to prevent the legislature from encroaching upon that field. After all, what we are having this liberty for? We are having this liberty in order to reform our social system. We are having this liberty to bring about a cessation in the inequalities, discriminations and other things which conflict with our fundamental rights. So why not have a social reform?
So why didn't the BJP do something with the Uniform Civil Code when you were in power under Vajpayee?
We may not have, we will.
So you're committing to that? I thought your position was a national debate.
Mr. Naqvi, who is a minister today, has told that we will go into a nationwide debate, and we have maintained in our manifesto also that we will borrow the best of everyone with the modernity of time reflecting out of it.
Where does the PDP stand on the question of the Uniform Civil Code?
Manish, the kind of mandate that we got in Jammu and Kashmir, the people of Jammu and Kashmir, rather than being drawn into a debate over Uniform Civil Code, needed governance immediately, and that's what was given to them without having the clause of Uniform Civil Code. Just a second, without having the clause of Uniform Civil Code in the Common Minimum Program, just as you and DMK had differing views in the Rajiv Gandhi murder case, but still you were in coalition with them.
If you have an answer, give it.
Okay, can we come back to the point at hand? Now you say no need for a uniform civil code. It's antithetical to the plurality and the diversity of India.
Incidentally, Ram Jethmalani also says that, whom they've expelled from the BJP.
Okay, so you and Ram Jethmalani have something in common. And be careful, the Congress may not have the same position as you. Okay, now let me just get Zakia Soman in. Zakia, very interesting, is a founder member of the Bharatiya Muslim Mahila Andolan. You have in a sense set up Sharia courts for women. Am I right in describing it as that? What does that mean?
As far as our country is concerned, there are no codified Muslim personal laws.
Yes.
The 1937 Act says that the Muslims in India will be governed by the Sharia Act, full stop. Nobody knows what comprises the Sharia Act. The 1939 Act talks about 9 grounds on which a Muslim woman can go to court seeking a divorce from her husband. Again, full stop. Following Shah Bano, 1986 Maintenance Act, which entitles a Muslim woman to get maintenance after she is divorced.
Yes.
But what about the age of marriage?
Yes.
What about triple talaq?
Yes.
What about polygamy?
Yeah.
What about custody of children?
Yeah.
What about property rights? None of this is codified in India under the, you know, what we understand as Muslim personal law, which is non-existence. Quran gave the rights to women 1400 years ago.
Yeah.
But have they translated in reality? The answer is a very obvious no. And just
so when Kamal Farooqi says that what the Quran said can't be changed.
Yeah, so that is exactly what we are saying. Triple talaq is totally un-Islamic and un-Quranic, and therefore it should be banned. And I agree 100% with Tahir Mahmood that there should be a ban on oral talaq in India.
And I'm going to hear from somebody.
Is talaq exist there in Quran or not?
It does exist, but not oral, unilateral talaq.
Don't say talaq oral is all.
No.
Is it mentioned anywhere in Quran? It has to be written in writing only.
Let's not take the substance out of
No, it's not substance.
The Quran.
May I just ask Farooqi Sahab a question? He's an old friend of mine, so he won't mind the question. You're a father also. Do you have a daughter, sir?
Yeah, mashallah.
If her husband were to say talaq to her and leave her, how would you feel as a father?
That's again I'm telling you.
No, seriously, I'm not trying to be nasty here. I'm asking you a serious question.
You may be nasty, you may not be nasty,
No,
but you have put up a question. I'll answer you that. I have already been telling you that as far as the triple talaq is concerned, There's a Hanafi school of thought which allows it in one go itself. Yes. But no other school of thoughts ban the talaq itself at all. Islam is the religion which says that if in case there are problems, the man and woman can't live together, there is an honorable exit route.
Yes.
And this honorable exit route has to be given in 3 different times.
So you do not support the oral triple talaq. You do not support it.
Yes, there needs to be a modification. Rather,
Okay.
let me tell you one thing. Let me tell you one thing.
There is a judgment.
I'll just
You have been criticizing Muslim Personal Law Board. Muslim Personal Law Board itself has provided a talaqnama, which very clearly opens up the whole debate into an arbitration clause.
Okay. Does this happen in life, or
happens.
Are men able to use this triple talaq to hide behind and do what they want to? अक्लीमा, आप ये बताइए कि आप मुजफ्फरनगर में रहती हैं और आपके साथ पहले तो बलात्कार हुआ
जी।
और आपने फिर अपने हस्बैंड को, जो कि सऊदी अरेबिया में काम करते हैं,
जी जी,
आपने उनको फोन किया कि मेरे साथ ये हादसा हुआ है,
जी।
तो उन्होंने आपको क्या बोला?
उन्होंने बोला कि तलाक दे दिया। मैंने तलाक 3 बार तलाक दे दिया।
फोन पर
बोला जी।
क्योंकि आपके साथ रेप हुआ?
जी, मेरे साथ रेप हुआ।
आप किसी से बात करने गए कि ये तलाक जायज भी है या नहीं?
हाँ जी, जायज ही हो गया। जब 3 बार बोल लिया तो जायज ही हो गया जी। और मैं मानती नहीं, मैं इस तलाक को मानती नहीं।
आप नहीं मानती?
जी नहीं, क्यों मेरा बच्चा भी छीन लिया और मैं तो बहुत ही परेशान हूँ। 4 आदमियों ने मेरे साथ घटना की और क्या नाम, अगर जब मैंने रिपोर्ट करी वहाँ से शाहपुर थाने में, तो उन्होंने 4 लाख रुपए दे दिए पुलिस वालों को। और 4 लाख रुपए देने के बाद मेरे को पैसे मांग रहे हैं, कह रहे पैसे दो। अब मैं मजबूर हूँ, मैं पैसे कहाँ से दूँ?
मुझे एक बात बताइए कि आपने उसके बाद आपने उनसे कोई बात करने की कोशिश की? उनका कोई फोन आया?
नहीं जी, फोन नहीं आया। मिस कॉल भी करी मैंने तो फोन नहीं आया उनका।
तो अब आपके माइंड में आपकी शादी है या नहीं है? आपने किसी लॉयर से पूछा, किसी मौलवी से पूछा, कुछ पूछा आपने?
अजी देखो, वो तलाक तो हो ही गया जब 3 बार कह दिया, पर मैं तो इसका इंसाफ चाहती हूँ कि जैसी सजा मुझे मिली और उनको भी ऐसी मिले। अगर ना इंसाफ मिला मुझे तो मैं अपनी आत्महत्या कर दूंगी।
ऐसा मत बोलिए
अजी। नहीं, मैं बहुत बड़ी परेशान हूँ और मुझे भी अब मेरे बच्चे को भी मारने की धमकी दे रहे हैं।
ऐसे आत्महत्या की बात नहीं करिए। अब आपके साथ बहुत लोग हैं और हम भी कोशिश करेंगे आपकी मदद करने के लिए। I want to ask you. You're saying uniform civil code is an anachronism. Diversity. What diversity allows us to do this to women, Manish?
But Barkha, you have to.
I will.
No. This is very important. Now I must tell her.
Okay.
There is a judgment of this Aurangabad bench of the Bombay High Court, which is applicable to all of us, which says all talaqs of this kind need to be confirmed by a court of law. And the judgment's title is Rahim Bibi versus Daju Khan.
But women don't know that.
No,
Exactly.
don't know that.
Can access
Exactly.
A court
This
of
is the whole
law.
problem.
People like you and me cannot access
Yeah,
the
इनको
court.
आप बोलेंगे कि आप कोर्ट में जाएं, वो कैसे
Triple
जाएंगे?
talaq is un-Islamic. Apart from that,
सोना, आप इनको उर्दू
जी,
में बोलिए।
आपका तलाक नहीं हुआ है।
बिल्कुल।
आप वो अभी भी आपके लिए पूरी जिम्मेदार हैं, नान नफका के लिए भी और आपकी दूसरा हाथ के लिए भी, बतौर खाविन के और बतौर औरत के जो होती है। अभी भी उनका फर्ज वही है जो फर्ज पहले थे। ये गलत है, वो नहीं दे सकते तलाक इस तरह से। ये जजमेंट कहती है कि जो भी तलाक इंसान देता है वो मर्द को कोर्ट से कंफर्म कराना पड़ता है।
But the reality, can I come in now?
नहीं,
the reality is,
I
do we
am-
want her to spend the next 10 years
I
in
am
court? Can
also-
she even afford to do
I
that?
am also coming to the reality.
quickly then I want to go to
The
Mira
problem
and
is
Manish.
that these judgments have not been publicized. Even the Shah Bano case, the people do not know it's a good law even today.
I heard you saying it's cruelty. This at least is abuse of basic equality.
It's
Okay, can I just get everybody else who hasn't spoken yet?
एक बात मैं पूछना आपसे और चाहता हूँ कि are we discussing the Muslim personal law here?
No.
We are discussing women, na? So these problems do not restrict
not
only to
specific.
Islam. Why are you not bringing those kind of cases? And this is happening everywhere in the society.
No, I take
So please, Masjid, don't try to malign Islam only.
I am not
This
trying
is what
to.
actually doing. You are doing it.
Okay, Neera.
This is
how
wrong.
are you doing it?
Maruki ji saying that
Bring
this
out
is
the-
happening everywhere in
Entire
society is a wrong
society.
statement.
I
The case is
will
happening
just
everywhere
hear
in
from
society.
गीता। यहाँ गीता भी बैठी
सही
है।
है, तो
गीता
yes.
राजस्थान से आई है।
हाँ।
वो इस्लाम धर्म की नहीं है।
तो फिर कहिए,
हम सब औरतों के बिहाफ पर बोलते
सब औरतों के
हैं।
behalf
एक
पर
धर्म
बोलिए।
को अटैक नहीं कर रहे
Don't
हैं।
attack Islam only.
I'm not attacking any
Yes.
faith. I am raising a wider, deeper point here. I'm asking you to explain your position because there has to be something that transcends religions. He's right. the Hindu community deals with dowry. You have other problems with till 2001 in the Christian community there were different complaints on the basis of which you could get a divorce, and there was a difference. There was a disparity between the rights of men and women.
Since you asked me this question, let us not confuse crime, cruelty, and personal law.
Okay.
Would a uniform civil code really become a panacea for these problems? The answer is absolutely no, because the evolution of civilization dates back to the Westphalian order. The movement which Our Lady out here has started of actually building consensus among the Muslim community in order to bring about reform, that is the correct way to go, because reform has to come from within the communities. It cannot be imposed from outside.
What do you say about that? No imposing.
The Hindu Personal Act or the codification of Hindu laws happened in a particular context and in a particular construct. That is unfortunately not the construct of India today, whether you like it or not.
Property rights and inheritance rights of Hindu women to ancestral property, they were reformed as late as 2005. So every community is grappling with this.
But how did it happen? How did it happen? In fact, I sat in that committee. There were representations after representations from women groups, from women, saying that there is a need to equalize it. So therefore it happened.
To this extent, I agree that it has to be through consensus and not by confrontation. And by that measures, definitely the communities have to come forward to see to it that we all speak for something which in fact takes the society above. But over here, let us also be reminded of the fact that the social reform is an ongoing process. 2014, Sabnam Hashmi to drag things to court because she wanted to adopt a girl child and she was not allowed to do so. She was, according to the personal law, allowed to be a guardian of the girl child, and the girl child would not get the rights of inheritance. Till 2015, we are fighting such cases.
Again, since it is being, it's a direct question to the Muslim personal law. Yes, if you want to discuss the this adoption, I can discuss in detail also. Why, in fact, she cannot get the equal right.
But the court gave it to her.
Yes.
The court gave it to her.
That the court gave. As far as Islam,
I cannot say let the court give because I have to respect the court.
Okay, can we let other people speak, please?
It's Barkha, the same kind of respect they gave an undertaking to the Supreme Court to protect the Babri Masjid. You would remember the Chief Minister of UP actually gave us
listen, this is not
that's the kind of respect.
One second.
Jawaharlal Nehru was standing for uniform civil code. Why did Ambedkar see to it after fighting tooth and nail that at least it should find a space?
Okay, can we get Neeraj Chandok to answer this? Manish, please. Now wait. Sambit and Manish, hold it now.
I'm a little surprised by this confrontation between two political positions, because after 85, it's very clear it's not an either or option for us who do not belong to the Muslim community by birth, though we have solidarity towards women. You see, you have to balance. Their uniform civil code is a catch-all term for women's rights, right? Now, on the one hand, feminists were till 1985 talking of women's rights as encapsulated in the uniform civil code against personal laws. But in 85, the extent of mobilization by patriarchal sections of the Muslim community actually forced them to recognize there is such a thing known as a right to your cultural identity. So there are two kinds of rights which have to be balanced by far-thinking people. The problem is when you speak of consensus, the problem is that every leadership goes to the patriarchal sections of the Muslim community to seek a consensus. If voices have to come from within the female section of the Muslim community, like Zakia, you guys have to speak to them. You're sitting on top, men getting together, enacting laws and not looking at the people of India. I'm sorry,
I think that's a very fair point. That in a way it becomes a self-perpetuating narrative, right? Because you just speak to the same groups, the same group protests, the same polarized conversation takes place. Let's try and find a middle ground on this on this show. Margaret, you live in Goa. Goa's civil common family law is often quoted as the only state that has it. But there have been critics of that as well. There are people who say, for example, that Hindus under the Goa law are allowed to have another marriage if their first partner has not produced a child by the age of 25. What's so great about Goa's common family law?
Okay, well, first of all, it's not the common family law. It is just the family laws of Goa. And Goa has been living quite comfortably and peacefully with all communities. The women of Goa, I feel sort of like a fish out of water here, because all these discussions seem to me like they could never have occurred in Goa. Well, the criticisms that you've spoken about, Barkha, are some anomalies that don't represent the majority of
that's
the
what
cases.
everybody would argue.
There
right?
are some.
And as Kamal
there are
Farooqi
old
says,
laws.
how many people really use triple talaq?
The fact is that women in Goa have the right to 50% of the property. We're not talking about maintenance here. We are talking about the embedded right, whether you are Hindu, whether you are Muslim, whether you are Catholic, whatever you may be, you have the right to 50% of the property. Not only that, your children have the right to never be disinherited. Up to 50% of your assets, you can, as a man or the other, or either spouse can give 50%.
And this civil law allows for elements of personal law within it.
Obviously, because we have existed there as communities for so long, it doesn't there is a reason for the separation of church and state and church and law, or religion and law. Religion is a private matter. What does uniform mean? It's about equality. When I hear people talk mostly on debates in this country, which hardly ever mention the Goa example, model, I feel a bit crazy, frankly, because one of the reasons I think jurists in the rest of India don't talk about Goa and the Goa Civil Code is because they don't understand it. And one of the reasons they don't understand it is because it wasn't ever translated until fairly recently. You had to be familiar, you had to be conversant both in Portuguese and in English in order to even understand the law. So Manohar Uzgaonkar, a senior advocate who was also a former Solicitor General of India, has been championing this cause for 20 years.
But isn't there also provision in the Goa law, great as some of its elements are, that say that if a woman hasn't produced a son by the age of 30, that is ground for her husband to take another part? I mean, it allows limited bigamy to that extent. So it may be
in the Hindu usages and custom, that comes under a separate law. It doesn't come under the civil code law.
But it's permitted.
Yes, and what I'm trying to explain to you is that it's not as simple as you're trying to put it. The reason that Goa is operating under a civil code that hasn't had a chance to be amended, which has been whittled away at by introductions of various Indian acts, it is governed by the Indian Civil Procedure Code, which is completely anomalous to the Napoleonic Code of civil procedure, and so it has not had an opportunity to evolve.
Okay, let me just bring in Father Stanley. Father Stanley, how is the Christian community coping with the conflict between personal law and women who've gone to court, especially child marriages? I gave that example.
When you speak about the Christians, there's a whole lot of them. But I am a Catholic priest.
Yes.
So whatever I am speaking is from the Catholic perspective. So we take it very clear.
Yes.
First, the thing is, in the case of marriageable age, the church says the validity of a marriage depends on a girl to be 14 and a man to be, the boy to be 16 for the validity of the marriage. But for the legality of the marriage, the church leaves its decision to the Bishops' Conference of every country. So Portuguese actually adopted their system, which was implied in Goa even before the independence.
Okay.
And now Indian Bishops' Conference have decided that the Indian age for marriage would be 18 and 21 according to the civil law of this country. So in the case of churches, in the Catholic perspective, law of succession, law of adoption, all these things are the church leaves to the state to decide.
Okay, Manish, quickly, and then I want to hear from Geeta here.
The Goa civil law is one law in a panoply of laws. For example, if I am a Hindu or if I am a Christian, I am not obligated to marry under the Goa civil laws. I can marry under my customary law and my
customs. So you're giving the Special Marriage Act as a solution
to
that's
exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Read the Special Marriage Act and the Indian Succession Act together, and you've got the perfect uniform civil code.
But in Goa, you can also get married under civil registration. You don't need the Special Marriage Act.
What I'm trying to say is
it's
another law in Goa
that the first of the couple gets civilly registered.
The church insists in Goa?
Insists on civil registration of the marriage first.
Yes.
I want to talk about why civil registration is so important, because in the rest of the country, if the marriage is not registered and you can't prove that you were married, you have no right.
But what I'm hearing here, Father Stanley, one minute. What I'm hearing a lot of you say, that the Special Marriage Act is enough of an alternative to discrimination. You're saying no, some others are saying yes.
No, why no? I'll tell you. Why
Can I-
options? Why to have two options when you're the best one?
To get married.
See, Shah Bano's case became a case only because someone took Shah Bano to the court. If she would not have been to the court, as many in this country do not reach the doorstep of the court, she would not have got justice. My only submission is there are crores of people who would not even know that there is a Special Marriage Act 1955.
Okay. Can we hear from Geeta now? Geeta, आप राजस्थान से आई हैं और आप की कितनी उम्र पर आपके फैमिली ने शादी करा दी?
7-8 माह की थी तब।
7-8 महीने। और आपको किस उम्र पे पता लगा कि ये आपके साथ हुआ?
मैं शायद 10th-12th में थी, तब पता चला था मुझे कि मेरी शादी हो चुकी है।
कभी आप उस लड़के से मिले?
नो,
नेवर।
नो।
फिर आपने क्या किया?
मुझे ये लगा कि शायद बाल विवाह नहीं होना चाहिए, तो वो शादी भी नहीं थी, तो फिर मैंने खुद ने उसको मतलब घर वालों को मना किया कि मुझे ये शादी नहीं रखनी, तो फिर
तो आपने कहा कि इसको अनल खत्म करो।
हाँ बिल्कुल।
तो कैसे किया? आप कचहरी में गए? कोर्ट में
नो नहीं गई वहाँ, बट मैं जैसे वो स्टाम्प के द्वारा सिग्नेचर पापा वगैरह थे, तो मैंने
नोटरी पे आपने लिखा कि मेरी शादी मैं नहीं मानती।
हाँ, मैं नहीं मानती।
और बहुत अच्छा किया आपने, और ये आपने बहादुरी दिखाई, लेकिन ये बहुत होता है ना?
हाँ होता है, लेकिन मैं भी शिव शिक्षा समिति जो रानौली में जो संस्था है, सेव द चिल्ड्रन, उस संस्था में भी कार्यकर्ता के रूप में काम कर रही हूँ। जहाँ भी बाल विवाह होता है तो उसी को मिटाने का प्रयास हम भी कर रहे हो, और उसी स्तर पे आगे बढ़ना चाहते हो, प्रयास करना चाहते हो कि बाल विवाह रोकथाम को लेकर हमारे राजस्थान में जो है बाल विवाह, जैसे टोंक जिले में शायद 1st नंबर पर टोंक जिला है।
जब आपने रोकने अपनी मैरिज खत्म करने का फैसला, मतलब मैरिज क्या चाइल्ड बाल विवाह, तो प्रेशर था कि ऐसे कि मत करो?
नो, प्रेशर तो नहीं था, बट हो गया था क्योंकि मैं छोटी थी तो मुझे खुद को पता नहीं था। मम्मी ने गोद में लेकर फेरे खाए थे।
नहीं, जब नोटरी आप देना चाहे तो आपकी फैमिली वालों ने या गांव वालों ने कहा कि ऐसा मत करो, आपकी तो शादी हो गई है।
नो,
तो थोड़ा तो जमाना बदला है।
हाँ बिल्कुल।
So this is the point. Now Kamal Farooqi Sahab, see, it's not about any one faith, it's not about any one community. We must all introspect. The law still has, Manish and Sambit, a loophole. It has a loophole under all personal laws that permit marriages under the age of 18, especially between 15 and 18. That's the grey area.
There is a way around it, and as I was saying, that if the state decides to legislate, it can equally go across all religious orders or all customary law.
Yes.
So therefore, the Uniform Civil Code does not really become a solution, Barkha, because let's suppose if you look at within the Hindu faith, there are 52 different ways of getting married, or could be 52 million also. So all I'm saying is, how are you going to homogenize or homogenize a heterogeneous society?
But on certain things, basic principles. First principles.
On first principles, you can do it insofar as trying to create an egalitarian state is concerned. But here, you are going to the very faith of people, which is the raison d'etre of the existence of a lot of people. Yeah. The only way that faith will get challenged is when the reform movement comes from within.
I think you need to ask women whether their faith is challenged when that happens. Because I'll tell you one thing. In 1981, although Nehru had promised that Goa's family laws would remain untouched, the center did make a probe into whether they could insert personal law into Goa. And do you know who fought that off? It was the Women's Muslim Association of Goa that did.
I agree with you. In fact, I was lauding their effort. You know, the effort
that
they are making.
No, I don't want to turn it again into a Muslim issue. But what I'm trying to tell you is what she said, that you don't ask the women. You presume a lot when you make those kind of statements.
I think we agree.
No, I totally agree with you. You know, women need to come into the conversation much more. And let me just answer some bit. You know, he raised a question about Nehru and Ambedkar about the Uniform Civil Code. Nehru and Ambedkar were trying to make a constitution by consensus. And if the constitution framers would have been serious about the Uniform Civil Code, it would have been in the fundamental rights and not the directive principle of state policy.
Okay. Now, before we go back and rewind history, Sambit.
Suppose if the Sati Pratha would have been till now, would anyone in this room would have been debating the fact that let them choose whether they want to commit Sati or whether they want to go with this kind of law. In this way, whether they want to have child marriage in that way.
I hope we are not under another colonial government. Now it has to be done through dialogue and debate. It cannot be imposed from above.
No, but it's a question.
But I have a valid point.
Can everything be
you have the
left
best,
to the
so why you have to
The more progressive, she has made it very clear. Just one sec, Zakia. In opposition to Mr. Farooqi, Zakia has made it very clear that any religious text is a matter of interpretation.
Yes.
And that is what we are doing in India, as well as looking at Draupadi or Sita or Savitri as emblems of women who made their choices.
Yes.
It's happening in Pakistan. So you cannot hold on to one rigid interpretation of Islam as the source of the negation of women's rights. That's the kind of consent.
Mother, to my Sampath, in fact, I'm talking to him. They are in the habit of making the entire country look like one.
No, tell me one single wrong thing that I've said all this while over here.
You tell me one thing. Our Constitution of India, which is very dear to us, how many times it has been amended? Because every time we are feeling that we need to amend it again, we need to change it. So no law would be perfect. As far as the religion is concerned, it is my personal faith. I feel that.
But you accept, sir, that interpretations of religion cannot be static.
No. As far as the basics of the religion are concerned, they don't change.
Exactly.
Okay,
basics of the religion don't change at all. Otherwise, I will not be a Muslim.
How can Turkey, Egypt, Sudan, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, Iran, Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, and even to extent Pakistan and Bangladesh have changes?
But that is a good point. There are Muslim countries that have done major modifications to their many of them have done away with triple talaq.
I am talking about talaq. No Muslim can say that talaq is not given.
Sir,
you are talking about triple talaq. There are different versions.
Okay. Zaka, 1 minute. Can I come to you right after I speak to Jameel Saab? Jameel Ahmed is Shah Bano's son, और आपने तो कई बारी बताया है कि किस तरह शाह बानो पर एक तरह से दबाव पड़ा कि आप कह दें कि भाई जो कि कोर्ट ने तो उनको हक दिया उनका, उन्होंने फिर प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करके कह दिया जब इतना दबाव आया कि मैं मेंटेनेंस नहीं लूंगी। ये बताइए हमारे यहाँ जो लोग बैठे हैं कि राजीव गांधी ने आपको कैसे दिल्ली बुलाया और क्या उन्होंने आपसे बोला?
ये नहीं, पहले तो आपका कहना है कि दबाव आया तो ये अपने आप में बिल्कुल गलत है। ये तो अपना खुद का हमारा अपना फैसला था। वो राजीव गांधी ने तो बुलाया था कि भाई ऐसा तो मसला चले, आप क्या चाहते हैं इसके अंदर?
अच्छा,
तो चूंकि हमारे मजहबन खिलाफ था, वो इस्लामिक रूल से खिलाफ था, और सुप्रीम कोर्ट के अंदर जो बात कही गई थी तो कुरान शरीफ की आयतों का गलत मतलब निकाल के उसको फैसला दिया गया था।
तो आपको नहीं लगता कि शाह बानो के साथ गलत हुआ?
नहीं, ऐसा तो नहीं कहा जाता, क्योंकि जो मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉ वगैरह जो है या हमारे शरीयत रूल जो है उसके हिसाब से तो वो जगह थी सही थी, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ जो मैरिज है वो इस कॉन्टेक्ट, और उसके अंदर ये नहीं है कि अगर आदमी वो तलाक देता है तो उसके साथ में वो इज्जत का जो पीरियड निकल जाए तो उसके बाद उनके अच्छी तरीके से निभाता है।
आप कह रहे हैं कि जो हुआ वो ठीक हुआ?
वो ठीक था।
तो फिर कोर्ट में लड़ाई कैसे हुई फिर?
हमने कहा करी।
Actually, this is what he said. This has become the common sense of the community somehow, that a woman has less rights than man in marriage.
I remember she said, "I don't want to face the fire of hell after death." That these were her exact words, and so therefore I withdraw my instructions. That was very unfortunate. We tried to explain to her that Quran gives her all the rights that we are demanding.
But today her son is saying the same thing. Ki jo hua wo theek hua.
No. The problem is that they don't understand the distinction between the customary law and the Quranic law. Quran is a document which gives fantastic fundamental and human rights to women. Unfortunately, the social practices and culture has taken it away from them with the passage of time.
So we should have a codified personal law, which is being, which is being
there should be a codified personal law. Okay, I'm going to start taking questions now. Yes.
The demographics of this country has changed, and now the individual should be considered over the community, and especially few people who actually represent this community and speak in their behalf. And primarily, all these, all these leaders of these communities, the primary aim that they have is to keep people in fold.
But Father Stanley, even when it comes to Christian women, till 2001, as I said, it was not an equal set of principles on which you could seek divorce, for example.
No, actually,
so how does the Catholic community deal with
the Catholic community? There is something, a period of legal separation. We always give a chance for repentance and coming reunion. The Catholic bonding in the marriage is till the death of either of the partner. So we in the Catholic community, there is nothing called divorce as such. We call it the marriage is null and void.
So annulling the marriage.
Annulling the marriage.
Right. Okay.
The process is basically the union is a religious bonding.
But isn't it true that women get punished differently
for adultery
it's not
than men? It is not true in the Catholic Church. It's an equal status is maintained, and the taking care of the alumni is given. All that is there.
I want to say something
about
Uniform Civil Code
that you raise about adultery, because if you look at the Indian Penal Code, only a man can be punished for adultery, because the underlying Victorian basis of the law is no. Women are chattel. So therefore, they can be adulterated with. So in fact, the one thing which needs to go is actually the entire law on adultery from the Indian Penal Code.
Absolutely. Okay.
Muslim law has a law on bigamy. Muslim law is the only law which has a law on bigamy.
I speak as an atheist. We are simply not ready. Do you see how sensitive as a nation we are? You heard his comments. You heard Shah Bano's son's comments. We are a God-fearing nation. Diversity and religious affiliations are our bedrock. You take this away from us, people are willing to burn temples and trains. You take their religious affiliations out of them, you give them a codified law, the country will perish. And I'm sorry, gender equality has greater means to be achieved than just religious connotations. Firstly. Secondly, what uniform civil code are we trying to achieve when the Parsi faith does not even recognize marriage as a social civil contract? Do you realize how diversified we are as a nation, and we are trying to come up with a common constitutional structure?
I'm sorry. I think you got that interpretation wrong. I think it does recognize it as a social contract. I think you got that wrong. I was getting a bit worried myself.
Why don't you explain to him what you mean? Manish, why don't you explain to him what you mean?
Well, I think I'll explain it. See, ultimately, the point he was making is absolutely correct. Given the diversity of India, I think there are enough issues that we need to deal with. Let this entire personal and customary controversy lie. Let's not unnecessarily stir still waters.
Just a second. So I want to draw your attention towards Jamil ji, who said that, I read his statements also from yesteryears, when he said the mother was ashamed of what she did. Just imagine her mother was thrown out at the age of 60 from her house with 5 young kids, and she is the one who should feel us.
At the age of 29.
Exactly. 29, and in 60 she was fighting for the alimony.
Meera Chandu was saying it happens to
all women.
In all religions.
Let for a moment say that Shah Bano was a Hindu, forget that she was a Muslim, let her be Aarti. How can we say that if Aarti's life improved, then the country would burn? For God's sake, we are young people, you are a young person. Let it codify. Let us codify that. The country will not burn for that.
Country will burn because you want to demolish fundamental rights of migrants.
No one is afraid that the women will burn the country for being deprived of their rights forever. Nobody asked the women. This is my personal opinion, and I hope I don't set the country on fire. But the only reason not to have a uniformity in civil code, and I'm not necessarily promoting the Goa one. The Goa one is antiquated, but it gives us a basis, and the Portuguese have replaced this code. But the only reason not to do it is to divest women of their property rights and other rights.
Zakia, you have a question for Samir Patra. Go ahead.
We need to ask this question. Where is the concern for uniform civil code coming from? Is it coming out of a concern for women's rights? Sambit Patraji may be fine with it. But some people associated with your party, for instance, are they going to do away with customs like Saptapadi, customs like Kanyadan? You know, the hundreds of customs which are associated with the Hindu marriage, which are, you know, part of the Hindu Marriage Act.
Absolutely right.
Are they going to allow you to do away with those and have a uniform civil code the way Margaret is proposing? So we need to ask this question.
I think that's a very fair question.
And
I think one thing that Manish said was interesting, though I may not agree with his complete stand against the uniform civil code. We must not homogenize culture to the point that we flatten out diversity. So there can't be a perception that this is being applied only to some faiths.
Barkha, you would remember when the last time this discussion had picked up fire, there was a huge article in a leading newspaper. There were rumors going on that once the Uniform Civil Code is up, the Muslims will lose the rights of burial and they would be going to the pyres. I mean, so a leading article in a leading newspaper, that kind of rumor mongering was going on. What our party believes, our party has codified this whole issue in a very short statement in its manifesto in 2014, and the statement is, we will borrow the best from everyone and we will modernize it according to the present time.
Okay,
the best from yours, the best from us.
I have to start taking last comments. We're out of time.
There is some, you see, of course, if people don't want to be married or inherit or whatever under the personal laws, they can go to the law of the land. That's not the issue. The issue is that if you choose to abide by your religious tenets, those tenets must be seen as changing and as dynamic and as capable of many interpretations which are compatible with the dignity of women. So women must not only have a choice between archaic personal laws and progressive civil codes, but if you choose to marry under your religious laws, progressive civil
and I want Manish to address that because that's been your argument. You have a comment?
We have seen a spark of civil activism in the public of Delhi. We have seen people storm into the gullies and chaurohas demanding justice. So I believe we as a nation of a sovereign socialist republic are ready to have Article 44 realized.
We the people are ready, Manish.
Well, you know, I entirely agree. I entirely agree with what ma'am is saying. But my only point of departure is that the reform impulse has to come from within rather than being imposed from outside. That's all I'm saying. That's why I started off by saying that I support exactly what they've been doing.
But
personal laws rather than putting an overarching construct from outside.
You saw Jamil, Shah Bano's son, saying that no, you know, it was अच्छा हुआ कि वापस हमने ले लिया मतलब दे दिया maintenance because we were told it's un-Islamic. How do you deal with socialization? What does it mean?
There's where the law comes in. That is the function of law. That is the function of a uniformity of law.
The manner of dealing with socialization is education. The manner of dealing with socialization is not putting a construct from outside. I'm sorry, it doesn't work.
It's also a rechurning of the community, including the Hindu community.
I agree with you entirely. I agree with you entirely.
Firstly, I wanted to get this very clear from Mr. Tiwari because since the time you said it, it's been pinching in my head. Is it what you said, the official position of Congress, that we should absolutely do away with Article 44?
It is my position,
and
I have written about it.
And secondly, simply because I have an option to subscribe to the Special Marriages Act, is it okay for me to sort of deal with the discrepancies which are part of my own personal laws, and is it all right for me to accept it?
That's exactly what ma'am was saying, that if I'm a believer, is the option between an archaic personal law and a progressive civil law? No, but the impulse to reform that archaic civil law has to come from within the community. It can't come from outside.
Father Stanley, I'm going to start with last comments. We'll start with you.
I was just about thing. Religion is a very personal affair. Okay. So my personal affair does not mean that I am not abiding the laws of this country.
But sometimes there's a conflict.
But that doesn't mean that you should do away with the personal laws. No, as I say, I do want to take one example from Kerala. One of the Catholic funeral was denied to a Catholic person in a Catholic church because he was not coming to the church. And the court ruled against church for not applying the canon law in the case of that person. Because the canon law says a Catholic must get a Catholic burial even if he is not a practicing
one. So you're saying, and some of you are saying the answers have to be within the faith. They have to be in recasting, reinterpreting the faith. Margaret, do you agree with that?
No, I don't. I think they're two separate issues. Personal laws of all religions are predominantly patriarchal, and if you're going to sit there and say it has to come from within, well, it has to come from within whom? Within these patriarchal constructs?
See, because the woman herself is looking for solutions within the Quranic framework. She is a believer, and it is a right given to us by the Constitution also. Just because the custodians of religion have been male patriarchal elements, let's not throw away religion, the baby with the bathtub.
Sona.
I believe that we are blessed with the Indian Constitution, the mandate. And whenever anybody from the personal law, any personal law, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, have approached the court for doing away with injustice, the courts have responded very well. But the problem is with the implementation.
You don't think we need a codified law for Muslim
we do need a codified law. That would be a wonderful thing to do. But at the same time, I think we must also do something to publicize, generate awareness with the judgments which have already come, because they are part of the law.
Like a Klima here who has no idea. Okay, last.
As a girl, if I happen to marry a Muslim guy tomorrow, how secure should I feel that I won't be emotionally forced to agree my husband coming in with a second woman in his life? And how secure should my kids feel?
But by the way, I can think of, I mean, I don't know how this legally works, but I can think of many people who are non-Muslim who also have more than one wife, Mr. Karunanidhi.
No, but he can't marry. He will not be able to marry again.
Sorry?
If you are marrying a Muslim, once he marries you under the Special Marriage Act, he will not be able to marry again.
Okay, let's say if I'm a Muslim girl and if I happen to marry
same
a
thing.
Muslim guy.
She's saying if I marry by a conventional ceremony, right? So that is where the dichotomy is. Last thoughts, Sambit and Manish. Yeah.
The beauty of the discussion and the beauty of the country is the diversity, in fact, the plurality.
Yeah.
But I believe there has to be some element of uniformity in the plurality, so to make it called as a nation. And since Supreme Court Chief Justices, after Chief Justices, have always been saying that this dead Article 44 has to be revived, I believe they say this with some wisdom.
Manish?
Well, Barkha, the 600-pound gorilla in the room,
yeah,
which nobody's spoken about, is that the Uniform Civil Code is a political issue.
Yes,
it is neither a religious issue, it is not a customary law issue, it is a live wire political issue, and therefore, when you run the gauntlet of the Uniform Civil Code, you possibly run the gauntlet of unraveling the idea of India. That's the only caution I like to admit.
Is it that dire, Manish? It really is that dire.
It really is that dire.
Okay. Last, before Neera gets the last word, a few voices here.
When I'm a Muslim, and every woman of India would not agree to the fact that her husband marries second wife and that there's triple divorce. In itself, giving a room that there should be the introduction of a civil law, that is Uniform Civil Code, because if we violate the Muslim law, the fanatics will be against it. And
so do you think Triple Talaq should be done away with?
It should be done away with, and the introduction of Special Marriage Act and the other Section 125 CRPC in itself a room that we can introduce Uniform Civil Code.
Need a last word that have to.
I think it is time that the women of every community are taken into confidence by the leadership.
Yeah.
And please do not try and standardize us. There is no statistical organization to standardize practices.
Yeah.
Let everybody leave us alone. Yeah. I mean, we'll find our own stuff.
That's the essence.
I think as Manish sir said that the best solution is either remove Article 44 or either remove personal laws, remove community, because there's no solution to it. All we are doing is we are just maximizing it.
End of the world is an answer to the debate on Uniform Civil Code. I think one thing that's very important is to give women a voice in this conversation. I think that's the most important takeaway from this. That while Manish, I think you're right in saying that it's become a kind of political football between the Congress and the BJP, so communities get
not
suspicious.
Only the Congress and the BJP.
And other parties, absolutely. So therefore communities get suspicious and insecure, but there have to be some move to reinterpreting customs and laws for the modern time. I think that's something that we have to underline. And
I'm with you on that.
And Sambit, let's see how far the BJP actually pushes this, because it was in your manifesto.
After all, we are the one who is going to push everything.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much.